Alright, so as you already know, within this time, 3 weeks from now, we would have beaten Sonic Frontiers. And as we near to the release of the game, there's been a question that's been on my mind. And that question is, in terms of gameplay, have they showed enough? So we're going to dissect this question right now. But if you have subscribed to the channel already, please make sure to subscribe. We are trying to hit 100,000 subscribers. But the question is, what is enough, right? If we look at the definition of enough, it's as much or as many as required. As much or as many of something as required, or to the required degree or extent, right? So there's the objective version of enough, and there's the subjective, right? The subjective is like, what is the required amount of gameplay that I have to see for me to be like, I am sold on the game, I am purchasing said game. And obviously, everyone's individual point is going to be different depending on, you know, how much money they got to spend and how invested they are in the franchise and what they think of this particular game as well. And then you've got the objective, which is just like comparing it to other games of similar vein and seeing how much stuff they showed and going, have we showed significantly less, significantly more, or a similar amount? So let's talk about the subjective for a second. Obviously, I'm a hardcore Sonic fan, so I'm naturally going to get the game anyway, because I'm a Sonic tuber, I want to cover it, you know. So even if I'm not 100% like this is going to be a masterpiece, I'm like, given that I'm going to cover it, I make money covering Sonic, it makes no sense to not get the game for me, right? As a fan, would I have still gotten it? I think so, but again, I'm a hardcore Sonic fan. I was going to get the new thing anyway. I mean, I didn't buy Rise of Lyric when it came out, I didn't buy Colors when that came out, so clearly I could say no if I didn't really want to play it. But I'm not in a point where I would say I don't want to play. I really think it'll still be a decent game, even if I don't think it's a masterpiece or anything like that. Nonetheless, we have in front of us, most of these tabs represent basically all of the gameplay that we have gotten for Sonic Frontiers officially. Now, why do I say officially? I say this because there was tons of leaked gameplay that we weren't supposed to see, and I'm not going to include that. I will bring it up, but I'm not going to include it. One of my most viewed Sonic Frontiers news videos was this one here. It got 65,000 views. I think it's my second most viewed in terms of the ones that showed gameplay, because the first most viewed was the one where I talked about the demo, because I actually played it. But this one here was when we first started getting potato quality leaks at, as you remember, actually I forgot, it was a Summer Game Fest related event, and we weren't allowed to film. I wasn't at this event. People were not allowed to film, and we were getting these potato quality leaks, and I'm not going to include that as part of the reveals. We were struggling to even see the HUD with this potato box quality. To me, that doesn't count. The things that Sega intended for us to see, have they shown enough of those things? So we're going to go through everything they've shown. We're not going to watch everything in full, but we're just going to dissect and be like, is this enough to sell the game? Again, enough is subjective, right? We don't have access to Sega's figures. We don't know if, you know, based on the pre-orders, that the game is on pace to selling really well for them, or what they consider to be a success. So whether it's enough or not, based on those pieces of data, we don't know. But we can go through and come to some kind of subjective conclusion as to whether it's enough. So if we go to the official Sonic the Hedgehog page right here, and we filter everything by Frontiers, you can see everything starts from about here. Before this point, we had seen no gameplay. We got the little tech demo shot in December of 2021, but here you got the IGN first teaser. We got the Sonic Central, which had a little bit of teaser as well, as they basically told you to go and check out IGN first. So this was taken from the IGN first. So we have these two pieces of information, and then of course we had the story trailer overview. That's music, so that's not really new gameplay. Then you had the TGS trailer, which I think had a little bit of new gameplay, and then combat and upgrades, and then again music. So if we look at the IGN first stuff, this was probably, no, this is the teaser. This was probably the first, no, I'm looking at the wrong stuff. Where's the IGN first stuff? This was probably the first major gameplay we got. And this obviously was not enough to sell the game because it got massive backlash. Look at the amount of dislikes it got. But as I go back to it and I've looked at it again, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it felt that bad because we had no context of how the game played. And I guess that's why it was bad marketing, because there was no context beforehand. Now that we understand more about how the game works, it doesn't feel like a complete mess when you go back and look at it. I mean, It was still more shoddy. It was still 30 FPS. The animations were still busted, especially on the rail switch, and the pop-in was still an issue. And for me personally, I think the 30 FPS was the biggest culprit because, you know, why not show it at 60, right? I guess they hadn't optimized it yet. But nonetheless, this was the first major talking point in terms of gameplay because it came the day after that little teaser trailer. And yeah, at the end of the day, it was rocky. They came back with the combat gameplay, which showed some new stuff as well, showed the enemies. We saw a bit more information, the bubblegum looking enemies, a few more abilities, and obviously they were talking as well, giving some information too. Most of this is from the first area of Kronos Island, like the tutorial, and then after being the tutorial where you get to Asura. So we're talking like the first like 20 minutes of the game, because when I got this far in the demo that I played, right, on the second playthrough, because the first playthrough I didn't get that far. But once you know what you're doing a little bit, you can move a bit faster through the tutorial and get there. So again, we're still within that first like 20 minutes or so of the game. And then this is how Sonic Frontiers came to be an open zone. And this is really an Azuka interview, so they're going to be using a lot of gameplay here. Like they're showing again, first island stuff, you know, early on in stuff that you could experience within the first half an hour of the game. And they mentioned some other games, they were showing Dark Souls and shit like that. But essentially, they're really not trying to delve past that first like 20 to 30 minutes or so of the game. And you can see that's about it for that. How Sonic Frontiers is an evolution of modern Sonic. We go through that. Daddy Keisha speaking. And essentially, yeah, again, that first 20 to 30 minutes of the game, whatever you could do within that period is pretty much what they are showing here. Puzzles, this was in the demo, that little hamster wheel thing, you know, that's from the tutorial section. Like, again, first 20 to 30 minutes, you could pretty much see all of this, right? We go back, we look at the trailers. Let me see, what else have we got here? Oh, I'll get back to that in a sec, because that's really important. But we go back here, we got the story trailer, and this is obviously focused on story, so it's showing some CGI. We're finally seeing some cyberspace, because remember that was embargoed, and people like critics were talking about it, but we weren't able to see it without the potato quality. So again, at this point, we hadn't even seen that. But yeah, now in the story trailer, we're seeing cyberspace, we're seeing a little bit of Ares Island. This, again, not too much new gameplay, but we've seen Ares Island here. You go here, you got the overview trailer. Again, we're seeing a bit more cyberspace, a bit more of the first island, but again, most of it is stuff you can see in the first 20 to 30 minutes, minus the little few snippets of Ares Island, which are appreciated. And you see again the Sky Sanctuary from cyberspace. You're seeing pretty much a lot of the same stuff we'd already seen before, plus a little bit of new stuff, right? TGS trailer. Again, that's where we see that new volcanic island, which we haven't really seen any significant gameplay of. We just got kind of like the shot of it, and that was it. But, and again, Ares Island, we've seen a little bit more of that here, but not too much of Ares Island. But this is the most we saw of Ares Island in a trailer. And we saw that little flying machine, which was pretty cool, but for like a split second. So I wonder what that's going to be used for. Some people said it'll be used for traveling from island to island, but I don't believe that's the case. Based on the leaks, the guy who got the opening cutscene and the supersonic boss battle, I don't think this is for that. So it's probably going to be an actual thing that we can control, hopefully. And we see the Titan little cutscene here. And that's probably something from later on, obviously, because it's the Titan, but it's not the end of the island because he's not supersonic yet. But we do get to see that. And then we see the supersonic transformation in the trailer. And then the last thing we saw, obviously, the combat and upgrades trailer, which focuses on obviously the combat, which again, they show a lot of the gameplay is repeated. Okay, they show a lot of things we've already seen before. You know, they go back to the first island a bit. A lot of things you could experience in the first 30 minutes of the island, but they do show some Ares Island stuff, which is good. And pretty much that's a lot of the main stuff that we've seen. The funny thing is, the best thing we saw for the game was probably from Jamatsu, right? If you look here, you got Jamatsu, Sonic Frontiers. This was back in June, I believe. Yep. And it was free 1 gameplay 1 and 2, battle gameplay 1 and 2, puzzle gameplay 1 and 2. And this is probably the best the game has looked, in my opinion. Because, I mean, we've seen some critics or whatever get to access part of the game, and even some of them showed some of it. Like, we saw, like, Chemical Plant Cyberspace footage from some critics. I don't have the exact links to those. I did react to them in streams, but we saw a few bits of cyberspace because of those streams, and a few bits of the first island within, like, demo-ish territory, right? Ares Island demo that the critics got to play, we never saw footage of that. It would have been nice to see that. Maybe we'll still see it, but as of now, we have not seen it. But I still think, out of everything we've seen, this was the best gameplay we got, was from Jamatsu, where they basically just showed the game. Remember, this is June, so this is after we had seen the 30 FPS build, with the lack of rail momentum, with the horrible rail switching animation that didn't switch, and then they just came in and they gave us this smoother looking gameplay, and it just looked a lot better. Again, I'm not saying the game is perfect or anything like that, but it finally started to take some shape, right? Everything just felt smoother, sleeker, more polished, and I think that's when people started to get a more positive feeling towards the game. So this stands as probably the best thing we've seen for the game thus yet, and it wasn't even posted to the official Sonic channels. It was just Jamatsu exclusive, but nonetheless, this is probably the thing that is doing the most for the game, and it's only like a minute long. And this is where they obviously fixed the rail animation for the switching. And they had free run gameplay too, which again, people use this in tons of videos. I mean, there was only like one issue in this clip where he was running really weirdly off the incline, but aside from that, you're getting a good feel for the island, right? Because we weren't able to see that much of the island because they weren't showing the demo footage, and they were telling people they couldn't film. So if you were seeing anything, it was shit they didn't want you to see. But this was something that actually got officially posted. You know, whether Jamatsu got, I'm guessing Jamatsu got the clip straight from Sega, because I don't think they would have filmed it themselves. And you can see here, this is smoother looking gameplay. The game looks a lot more interesting here. And they're even doing tricks, which I didn't know how to do the tricks when I played the demo, I'm not gonna lie. But they did tricks here. And then obviously you got the battle gameplay. So we saw that fight against Ninja, which again, with the 60 FPS and everything looks a lot sleeker here. No HUD, so you can't really tell how everything works yet, because at this point it was still June. But we were seeing a decent amount of stuff, right? And then obviously battle gameplay 2, that goes into, I believe it's the tower boss. But you guys know what the tower boss is like. But yeah, we saw the tower boss, and then we got the puzzle gameplay, which again, the puzzles are still basic. Like, this is a basic ass puzzle, but just seeing the game in a smoother light, especially this dusky kind of aesthetic, was appealing, I'm not gonna lie, okay? And then puzzle gameplay 2, this is the basic tutorial puzzle again. But my point is this: as I said, enough is subjective. If they've shown enough, it means you'd want to pre-order the game, right? Now, as a Sonic fan, I am going to pre-order, so it's not like a big deal for me personally. But I do feel like they could have showed more, right? And that's for, well, two major reasons. One, other open world games tend to show more, right? Like, if we look at Breath of the Wild, they had a whole Nintendo Treehouse in 2016. They showed, what, around 4 hours they were playing this game. Now, I don't know if that's 4 hours, like, straight. Did they replay parts of the game? I'm not going to sit through 4 hours to find out. But, essentially, they were playing through the game and just showing you the experience of playing through the game for a decent amount of time. And some critics did get to do a bit of that, but they didn't get nowhere near as far. It was maybe, like, early in the tutorial, or the first part of the island, like, demo kind of territory, right? The most you would have seen is from leaks, again. So, compared to something like Breath of the Wild, it's not as much content. Assassin's Creed Origins, now this was 10 days before launch, which we haven't reached 10 days before launch of Frontiers, but they had a stream here which was almost 2 hours. Some of it they're not playing, like there's some talking sections and stuff like that, but they were essentially playing the game and just letting us see what it is like, right? So if other open worlds are able to do this, right, and according to them the game is 20 to 60 hours, which again, I heavily dispute that. I made a video talking about that, or 2 videos, you can watch this one in particular, and a lot of people got mad at me. But I mean, people always get mad at me for saying shit. I mean, people are still mad at me for comparing Frontiers to Unleashed, which quite frankly, is the best game to compare it to within the franchise in terms of similarities, focus on combat, you know, open world elements, collectibles being required to progress, and then day levels that are focused on boosting. I mean, it is the closest thing within the franchise, so we will get compared. But nonetheless, they were selling the game as 20 to 30 hours to beat the main game, and around double that to 100%. So if we're looking at 20 to 30 hours worth of content for a game that is 5 islands confirmed, you're looking at, if every island is equal in length, about 6 hours per island. So how is it that we haven't left the first, say, 30 minutes of the first island in terms of all the gameplay we've seen, and we see maybe like, can we even say 5 minutes of the second island? And we've seen a little bit of footage of the volcanic cloud island, but not really much gameplay of that. I'm not saying they got to show every single island, right? You can still leave some islands to mystery, but at least hone in on more of the islands you've already seen. Like, could we get some gameplay of the volcanic island? Could we get a bit more of Kronos? Could we get a stream of you just playing a game for a couple hours? If it's supposedly a 30-hour game, 20 to 30 hours, you're looking at, you know, 4 to 6 hours at least per island. If you're not 100%, you're just beating, right? So we should expect to see some kind of stream or something where we're really just playing through and seeing what it's like. Because if there's so many variations of what you could do, so many options, so many ways to get these collectibles, then even one path to beat in the first island would still have tons of other routes and paths, which means tons of things you wouldn't have seen. So it's not going to be super spoiler heavy. I know Azuka wants to retain that mystery or whatever, but at some point you're going to have to show a bit more, right? Some people might complain, oh, it's going to be spoilers, but you don't have to watch, right? No one's forcing you to watch if they decide to stream a bit more content. But again, you never really know for sure until the sales figures come out, right? Maybe they have shown off. Maybe everyone's pre-ordering the game and I'm just chatting bullshit, right? But nonetheless, I feel like they could do a little bit more. One could argue that if the game was truly a masterpiece, you wouldn't need to see more and you'd be ready to just hop in and, you know, play, right? And I guess there is some merit to that, because I mean, there are games that within the first trailer you were sold, right? Like Super Mario Odyssey, they didn't even show the capturing ability in the first trailer, and I felt like I was sold off of that. You know, that doesn't happen to me with a lot of games, but usually games where you already know the franchise and you kind of have some trust, you're like, okay, yeah, I want to cop that, I want to pay for that. But again, only time will tell, man. Let me know what you guys think about this situation. Do you think they've shown enough officially, or do you think we relied too much on leaks to actually get our fix of the game, looking at people taking footage of demos that they weren't supposed to take to get a better idea of what was going on the island, to get ideas of variations and things you could do with the physics and all sorts of things that they never really revealed officially but was in the game? I really do think if it wasn't for the leaks, it would have been a bit too bare bones of a reveal, and those footage leaks essentially did half of the marketing for them. But that's just my opinion. And of course, a big shout out to my channel members. If you want to become a channel member, click the join button next to the subscribe button. But yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell. Make sure to check out the non-Sonic channel. The link will be in the description. But that's all I have to say right now. So, Premy out.